Welcome to Teen Up, a podcast that digs deeper into the thoughts of teenagers' mind about the wonders of the world.
If you're new here, I'm your host, Isabella.
And I'm Glenn. If you're not, welcome back.
Here is a quick disclaimer. We are two teenagers that are doing our best to research everything. However, we are not experts, so if we offend anyone or say something wrong, we want to apologize in advance. Please email us to tell us what was wrong. Thank you.
This week, we have Isabel from Just Isabel Things Podcast, and she'll be discussing her opinions on education with us.
I'll start with the first one. Could you just do a little podcast intro for your podcast?
Yeah. So, hi, my name is Isabel. I am the host and creator of the Just Isabel Things Podcast. Every Sunday, I put out a new episode where I talk about pretty much everything from movies, personal life experiences. I also have tons of guests on the podcast as well. And you can follow me on Instagram at just.isabel.things.podcast. And I would love for you to check out my podcast. Again, that's Just Isabel Things.
Okay, great. So with the first question here, why do you think education matters?
I think education matters because it's honestly the key to success, I feel like. I mean, there are a lot of great people out there who aren't educated, and that I think is like absolutely crazy. Like, their success stories, and I find them super inspiring. But I think education matters, and I think education is important because you learn so much from education, and there's so many experiences that come with education, not so much just the academic part, but the social aspect of education as well, and like meeting people, and yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next one. Does education determine a person's future job?
I think it's a very big contributing factor, but not in every case. Like in college, you could have someone major in, let's say, education, but they could turn out to be like a business person. And you could have someone in college major in business, but then they, go back to school in their adult years and become a nurse. So I think it can be a contributing factor. Like a lot of people who do major in business go on to be business people, and a lot of people who, major in nursing, like going to become a nurse. But yeah, I definitely would say it is a contributing factor, but not in all cases.
Yeah, I do think that is a very interesting thing that people do, because one of my teachers from elementary school, he actually majored in politics, and he later I think he took some classes in education and then became an elementary school teacher. So would you say that it doesn't matter that much as like some people might say, maybe like in terms of higher education? Like,
I wouldn't say like you should put it off to the side and just major in whatever, because again, you are paying for a college education, and college, especially in the US, is very expensive. So like you should major in something that you're interested in, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I mean, if you or your parents are paying a lot of money for college, then you should put some thought into what you want to major in and what you're trying to do. So that's kind of my take on that.
Okay, yeah. Next question. What are some things that you think could be fixed in this whole education system?
Whew, that is a very big question. And yes, and a lot of things can be fixed in the education system. So I am going to be a freshman in college, but one of my big senior projects as a senior in high school, one of my big projects was I had to do a research paper, and it turned out to be like a 15-page research paper. We got to pick a topic that we thought could use like some fixing. It didn't have to be with education. It could be like human trafficking, like all that good stuff. And so my topic was special education reform. And I did a ton of research on special education, how COVID has affected special education, funding, which is a big problem throughout education, not just special education. So one of the biggest things that I care for and like I'm really passionate about is special education. I'm not like majoring it in college, but it's just something I am like passionate about and have a big heart for. So I think special education is a very big problem in education. I also think funding just in general is a very big issue in education. these schools, there are some schools out there who just don't get anything, and it's really, really, really hard to watch. I think teachers are underpaid. I really do. I mean, they're the ones educating us, so I feel like they should, they deserve more money and more pay. But that's just a few of the problems I believe that should be fixed in education.
I guess in a way, how would you say if like you're the governor or if you're like the president, how would you fix these problems?
Oh, how would I fix these problems? Well, I would definitely would want to look at all of the schools and maybe, I don't know what I would do. I'll probably just like do an overview of all of the schools if I'm a mayor, governor, president, whatever. And I would just say, okay, for all the schools that, get under, say, $1 million in special education funding, then let's bump that up to 1.5 million. But I haven't really looked into other ways to, I guess, increase funding or increase resources in the classroom. It's really hard because, the US is broke and like money is like so weird in the US. But yeah, that's just something I would do maybe. I don't know. I'm not like super into politics, so I don't know of like ways to like fix like world problems, but I'll have to look more into it.
Yeah, but like in general, you would say like raising awareness.
Yeah, raising awareness is honestly such a big thing too. That's honestly like if you don't have like the money resources immediately, like even just raising awareness and just like speaking to like members of Congress and stuff like that is honestly one step could change a lot.
Yeah.
So next question. What type of curriculum have you had in the past or present? Is there anything in particular that you would like to change about that specific curriculum?
Yeah, so throughout my whole entire life, so from the time I was in preschool and even now, I was enrolled in private education, private Catholic education. So I have never been in a public school setting, and I don't think I will ever be in a public school setting. I am going to a private college. Maybe I'll transfer. I don't know. But I am going to a private college. I have been in the private education system for many, many years. So I know it very well. And what was the second half of that question?
Is there anything in particular that you would like to change about that specific curriculum?
Anything in particular I would like to change about? I don't know. I guess I've never thought about it, but private like education and stuff does kind of get like a bad rap for being, like these snotty like rich kids, like private education, like there's like this stigma like, oh, like private education just means like smarter kids and all this stuff. And sometimes it does get annoying. I've heard it so many times. I've heard it toward me so many times, and it does get annoying. It's just like, okay, like that's not true. Like no matter what education you get, you're going to succeed in the world. And I just, I'm enrolled in private education just because that's what works for my family. And like, that's like the family tradition that that's just family tradition that, my parents went through private education. My grandparents went through private education as well. So
what would you say is something that your school did well? Like you think maybe other schools or other places could adopt?
So for preschool through 8th grade, I was in one school, and then high school, I was in another school. And then I'm going to be in college, so that's another school. So I've been in 3 private schools. So I feel like I can give an interesting take on this. In my grade school, I graduated from 8th grade in 2017, and kind of then during middle school was when a lot of schools in my area, in particular, were adopting or adapting to more technology in the classroom. In 6th grade, we all got our own laptops, and we were kind of the first school to do that in the area, which was really cool. So I think my private school prepared me in the sense of that I kind of got a hand on technology and like how to use like Google like services, like Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Drive, like that type of stuff, like Google Classroom. So I think my private grade school prepared me very well for like technology in the future. And now I use like Google Sheets like all the time for like podcast stuff. And then for high school, in terms of like my high school private education prepared me very well for college. I did a summer class in college. Like this past summer, I did a class, like an English class, and I did very well in the class, and it was kind of a breeze. So I'm glad that my private high school education prepared me very well. And I'm not saying like if I were to have a public school education, like I would not be prepared for that class, but that's just my personal experience of how my private education prepared me for that class, and I hope it can prepare me well for the future of college and what's to come.
Okay. So you think that the private education like overall did well? Like you appreciated like the overall, right?
Yes.
But I don't know if it's like the same with private education and the US, but like do you feel like you could be given more free time in your whole like
Yes. So for my high school was known to be very like very academic driven. I had lots of homework throughout high school, very like college prep. Let's get down to business, like study. And I mean, I did have a social life. I did have friends. We went to football games on the weekends. We had our high school dances still. I was involved in clubs too. So it wasn't all like academics all the time, but my high school particularly was very like top academically driven. And a lot of kids in my high school from my high school were very, very, very smart. I was not one of them, but in America we have this thing called the ACT. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the ACT, but it's basically a test that you take in your junior year. And it's scored on a scale of like 1 to 36. And my high school average was a 30, which is very, very, very good. And the national average is like a 22. And like the public school average in my area is like a 23, 24, 25. So for it to be a 30 is really crazy. So my high school experience was very much rooted in like strong academics for high school, or not for high school, for like to prepare you for college.
Okay, so moving on to the last question. Do you think that one's neighborhood determines one's future?
I believe it's a contributing, like I said in a couple questions ago, I believe it is a contributing factor. Not all cases, but I believe it can be a contributing factor. So if you live in a predominantly good neighborhood, safe neighborhood, great schools, then where, let's say 90% or higher of your graduating class goes on to college, then chances are you probably will go to college, and you have a lot of resources available to you to go to college. I live in Chicago suburbs, but closer to the city of Chicago, there are those neighborhoods that are some of the worst neighborhoods in the US. So I, see it on the news all the time where, not a lot of kids from these schools have the resources to go to college. A lot of parents of those children did not go to college themselves, and unfortunately, that just happens. It happens all over the US. It happens all over the world. You do hear those success stories of kids who grew up in not the best neighborhoods and who go on to do great things. And they go on to Yale and Harvard, and they're first generation college students. And it's so fulfilling and great to hear those stories. So I believe it is a contributing factor, but not in all cases and scenarios. I mean, you also could have someone who has, in my grade particularly, you could have someone who has, so my grade 100% went on to college. And we only had like 2 people who went on to do military. So, if someone were not to go to, like, it could happen where someone in my school setting didn't go to college, or like did not like go on to go to college. Like that could be that could easily happen. I think it has happened before. But yeah, I believe your neighborhood or your environment is a contributing factor, but not in all cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually kind of get this question from like a video from Vox, and that video was talking about like how like the zoning of the government, and mainly about public schools and which schools you go to. They are like, their argument is kind of like it's a remnant of older times. So it's an issue that people should be aware of, and that something we can all work to solve together.
Definitely. And it's going to be really interesting to see how, the effect of COVID and just kind of seeing how that plays out for education systems in the next 5-10 years or so. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a very big impact, and it really got people started to thinking differently and maybe rethink some things that we believed before.
For sure. For sure.
So I guess that brings us to an end to this. We're really happy that you're here with us, and thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time on this podcast talking about education. This is like the first time I've talked about like education as a guest on a podcast before. So I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much again for all those who are listening. My name is Isabel. You can check out my podcast, just.isabel.things.podcast on Instagram, and you can search Just Isabel Things on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity, and I can't wait to see what you guys do in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Isabel, for joining us today. Remember to check out her podcast. It's called Just Isabel Things.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Remember to like, subscribe, and share our channel.
Also, comment down below if you have any thoughts. You could click on the bell to get notified when we upload a new video as well.
Thank you and bye.